talking all things theatre and events.
I've also worked for artists such as Black Sabbath, Metallica, Drake.
Been part of some amazing shows and worked with some amazing people.
Nothing that replaces that feeling of being in a gig.
The Stage Is Yours podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Stage Is Yours podcast. I'm your host Carl Graham, joined as always by producer Dan, and we're talking all things theatre and events. So today we're talking virtual studios, different ways into the industry, and the increasing role video technology is starting to play on our shows and productions. Our guest today has worked all over the industry with companies like Adlib and Dragonfly Lighting, working with some massive artists in some huge venues. Nick Whitehead, the stage is yours. Well, welcome to the podcast, mate. It's grand to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
No worries at all, man. It's been probably far too long since we spoke and seen each other. We were just trying to figure it out. We think 3, maybe 4.
3. Definitely a plaza.
Definitely a plaza, looking at shiny new things, as we always do. But how's life treating you, mate? How's things in this strange old world?
Oh, well, yeah, very strange old world. I don't know. This year's been a bit of a blur now. Obviously, I'm sure we'll get onto it in a bit later. The whole industry's gone down in a very interesting way, but I've ended up being one of the lucky ones. So it's been all right. Been lots of ups and downs.
Yeah,
lots
definitely.
of speaking to mates because no one's out in the world seeing anyone right now. So.
Yeah, I think that's very much the bit that you suddenly realise that actually for us in this industry, how much your social life is tied into who you work with and the network of stuff as well. I think I've certainly found that over the last few months. So you managed to mention you one of the, like I said, one of the lucky ones who's still managing to work and stuff. You were working for Adlib, right? Just before.
So I still am, which is part of the thing of being one of the lucky ones. But I work for Adlib in Liverpool. I've been time there now for coming up to 2 years, which is quite scary when I think about it.
I'm sure most people in the industry are aware of Adlib from that, but I mean, just explaining obviously what Adlib are and roughly do, I think would be useful for some people.
So Adlib is a full-service lighting, audio, video production company based out of Liverpool. We're an independent company. Andy, the managing director, he's been there for 35 years, and he's still calling the shots. We predominantly work in concert, touring, festivals, but we also have a lot of work in kind of comedy and corporate events and some other little bits and pieces. We've worked with people from Kaiser Chiefs, Jerry Cinnamon, Bugsy Malone, big festivals like Transmit, BBC's Biggest Weekends, the Capitol, Summertime and Jingle Time Balls. Then, like I was saying, we do a lot of the comedy stuff as well. So we do Russell Howard, Jim Jeffries. It's pretty monumental how long the list goes on for, which is really, really good. I mean, start of this year we had 170 full-time staff, and in an ordinary summer we could probably be taking on a small army of freelancers as well. So that's what Adlib do. I'm a technical manager for lighting and video, which is I don't think that job title actually describes what I do, but I do anything from kind of specifying lighting and video systems, going out, working with our engineers, kind of see how we can do practices better, working with our account handlers to make sure jobs are quoted correctly, but we're also making best use of equipment, looking into new systems, new purchases, what we need to make stuff happen. And yeah, it's a whirlwind in what I would normally be doing if had we not had this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the part of the industry that has certainly in current times sadly been somewhat forgotten about, the kind of supply chain, if you like, I think is very difficult. I think it's not part that people realize, unless you're in the industry, necessarily realize exist really, because I mean, not the production, if you're on the show that's fine, but who's the guy supplying all the kit? The band don't own it all, that's for sure. So obviously that's had a massive impact on Adlib as a whole, and you touched on it there that you've gone from absolutely chocker full books to, I mean, White Light have come out and said they're running on 10% of their normal workload, really, in terms of what they've got. So I imagine that's broadly similar for you and yourself at Adlib.
Yeah, I think the similarities across all the major production companies. You know, the biggest part of our year was always festivals and touring, and all the tours came home in the middle of March, and none of the festivals went out. You know, it's and that's across the board. You know, there's lots of companies similar to us who, you know, we have our hands in lots of different things, but concerts, touring, that is our main world, and especially the festival season. I mean, in the United Kingdom, we have some of the most vibrant festivals and biggest festivals in the world, and there's a massive supply chain, not just from production, but also from people who do the catering, the site management, the kind of all the generators, power, and it's just such a huge supply chain to make that happen. You look at something like Glastonbury, and there's tens of thousands of people working behind the scenes just to make the festival happen. So for that whole world to come crumbling down this year is been a massive impact for everyone.
I think that's the thing, and I think it's the part that people don't realise is that for a lot of people, the festival is the days that it happens for, whether that's 4, 5, 6 in some cases. It's for us, it's really not. It can be, I mean, there's guys on site at Glastonbury for probably the thick end of a month, if not more, as a whole thing for what is essentially what's advertised as 3 big days and 3 headliners, and that's kind of it. Obviously, it goes on a little bit longer around that, but for some people, that's all it is. Yet for us, it's a month, maybe 6 weeks work, and it's a very sorry state of affairs, and we can only hope that all the news that's recently coming out around vaccines and things is all positive and good news, and we get back to doing what we want to do, really. I think it is. I've done that. So let's move on from the slightly dull and depressing chat, because it starts with that. And I think there's been some interesting ways, and obviously everyone's kind of adapting to make things work. And a lot of companies, and I'm sure yourselves, have looking down the idea of these virtual performances, gigs, and things like that. Have Adlib kind of really tried to push this and kind of create something a bit different?
So we've actually been involved with a couple of projects like this. We right at the offset back in March, beginning of April, started going, right, we don't know how long this is going to last. We need to look at ideas that are obviously not only good for the artists and the bands we work with, but they also need to be beneficial back to ourselves. And I think a lot of production companies were out there doing that. The thing is, if you think about what the kind of the branding of virtual studio is, it is a traditional broadcast studio. It's what you would do a television show in, or record I don't know, late with Jules Holland and stuff like that. The production companies usually have a bit of an advantage because they've probably already got everything in their space, or a couple of companies can band together to make that kind of work. Now there's a lot of thought and process you need to go behind the kind of COVID securities and everything that goes with that. But you also have rights management. If you're streaming to the internet, you have to have a look at a lot of that, and you need to make sure that if you're working with the artist, you're also working with their label and their management behind that. So that's kind of the default of what a lot of people have gone out and done. As you go up the chain, you go into these more kind of interesting worlds of new technologies and progression within that. Now, on the media server side, and people who are working with high-end video production and that world, a lot of the push has been towards extended reality, which is a world where you put your artist or your band in a space surrounded by video, and then the video is reacting to where the camera is, and in real time, the band, it's a glorified way of doing a green screen, but there's so much more possibilities. So the band could now be anywhere in the world on a stage, on a hyper realized stage. So a lot of the big EDM stuff like Tomorrowland, they did these big hyper realistic productions. So it looked like you were in a festival, but on a scale to no real festival would ever happen. So lots been pushed in that world. We had a look into that, and there's a high cost of technology on the upfront, of which we had some, but not all of what we need to do that. And it's not really our specialist area anyway. There's a lot of small independent design studios who are brilliant at making content for that kind of stuff. And they're the ones who have been really pushing that. The biggest project for us that I've been quite involved with now for since about June now, or maybe late May, is we're working with a virtual reality company called Melody VR, and they've been creating studio spaces to record content in virtual reality. Now, virtual reality, you might think of the headsets, but it's a way of, on your phone or in a headset, being able to be in a space but look around it. So the cameras record in 360. So we've now done, we've been working with them since June. They did all of Wireless Festival. They did Wireless for Connect online, so you could watch it on your phone, on YouTube, stuff like that. And now they're doing their own series live from Brixton Academy, which is where I've spent most of my past couple of months, which is both a blessing and a curse. So there's a lot of different ways out there. Lots of people are doing kind of what you might call a virtual studio or extended reality or something like that. The biggest feedback we've had from everything is the audience, your viewer, the person on the other end of the app, cool, they're seeing content, they're getting entertainment, but they're not at a gig. And there's nothing that replaces that feeling of being in a gig. And it happens in both ways, because if the band stand on an empty stage, trying to get them in an empty room, trying to get them to pour their heart out, there's no fans there in where they are. There's been a couple of things where people have done kind of, the band's been live, and then they've got live feed of people at home back in. But what we're really seeing, and what a lot of people are realizing, is this is a stopgap. This is something that's getting us from where we are now to the time in which we can do live events again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've spoken to a number of different people now from different parts of the industry, and it's something that comes up every single time, is that no matter how good your replacement is, your stopgap, it never quite recreates that feeling of being in that venue, in that theatre, in that show, there watching it live. No matter how good the production level is on the other side of it. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that's resonating an awful lot with a lot of people, as they're realizing quite how important that crowd is, even to those of us who aren't there to perform. I think it's certainly with yourself at Brixton, doing work at Brixton at the moment, I'm sure it's a very different environment working on that with no one around. And I think, like I said, it's just a very, very strange time. But I think it's great that we've developed, or we started to create these things, but it'll be nice if we can take it forward and maybe utilize some of it more in going forward, and when things are somewhat a little bit more back to normal, and whether there's new things that you guys have found that actually, when we get back to normal, we can do this, we can add this in, it'll be great.
Yeah.
So,
well, absolutely. And I think the world of corporate and conferences, I think they'll hold on to the virtual side a lot more, because they're missing out on the kind of the coffee break connections. That's kind of what a lot of corporate is about, not necessarily the content, but getting people in the same room. But in terms of getting content out, especially things like product launches and that whole world, I think the virtual side will definitely stick around, because that actually in the end their costs come down quite significantly to do that kind of event. But on the live music side, like as you said, it's not just the band wanting that buzz. Pretty much everyone who does what we do gets a buzz from the crowd. whether you're in a theatre and the stagehands, you're there because you're supporting the actors, but you're also creating a space for people to be entertained. And it's the same in rock and roll. It's the same at festivals. Everyone there is there because you're making people happy. As corny as that sounds, but
yeah, absolutely. And I did a podcast that came out just recently with, I don't know if you ever crossed paths with Luca when you were studying. I don't know if your times ever quite crossed, but Luca's now an arena rigger and doing that. And he said and let's face it, he's normally in the venue way before and is there way after everyone else. And he says it's still that massive buzz of, as he's walking into work, hearing people singing the songs as they're coming out, knowing that, yes, okay, he's very much in the logistical side of it, but even for him, it's still a very, very weird situation. I mean, he's in France putting up a climbing wall this week, and his last gig before March was Lewis Capaldi at Wembley. So he's kind of like, it's just a little bit of a change. So yeah, I think it's absolutely the case of where it is at the moment. Yeah, so moving on a little bit, I think it's, like I said, everything's chopping and changing. And I'm keen to speak to, and hopefully I'm going to chat to a couple of kind of people who unfortunately are trying to just start out in the industry at this particular time. So I was kind of just wanted to chat a little bit. I know your path into the industry is a little bit different. Mine was certainly a slightly different one of doing that, and just kind of chatting a little bit about that, how you feel different routes into the industry are, kind of how it can vary so much, and whether you feel there's if there is a right way into the industry or if there's a better way you feel into the industry. So yeah, just kind of chat about how you feel about that, really, because I know you said you were doing a little bit of teaching, or maybe beforehand, or whether you are now managing to do a little bit with universities being back.
Yeah, so I feel like I probably ended up with every slice of how you would potentially get into the industry. I was just give you my backstory. Incredibly lucky, I at the age of 11 or 12, I was in a school that we didn't have a theatre, but we had a stage, we had lighting, we had kind of little bits of production. We had a performing arts status as a school, which meant when they first got that, they spent a load of money on a load of equipment. But 2 years later, when I joined the school, there was no one there who really knew how to use it, what they were doing. A couple of sixth formers had been interested, but they had moved on, and there wasn't any teachers who knew what was going on. So having had some interest, I think going even further back than that, I'd always had interest in stage and theatre. From a very young age, had been exposed to being lucky to go to the theatre, being involved with the fact that my parents were involved with Amdram. I got brought along because it was cheaper than having a babysitter. And so I'd always kind of, at a very, very basic stage, had a very little involvement. When I joined secondary school, I was saying we had some lighting equipment, we had a stage, but there wasn't really anyone around who could kind of use it or work it. And having had that interest, I jumped at the opportunity to go and learn how can I use the lighting desk? How can we use lights in different ways? For the first couple of years, it was very learn by myself and learn with the people around me who were also interested. I'm actually very lucky. One of my best mates to this day, we were both at school together, and we've ended up in the industry via different paths, but we were learning together. He was learning about audio, I was learning about lighting, and over time they discovered there was a teacher in the school who was interested, and she started learning with us. And the best thing she taught me was that ability to go and teach yourself. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't know what necessarily we were doing. There were some moving lights and our lighting console that could barely use them. And we were learning how to use them via the manuals and kind of what little there was online, because this is back around the start of when YouTube was a thing. So some of this stuff had started happening on YouTube, but I think nowadays there's such a wealth of resources online that, I mean, I was lucky to have some of that. People before me had none of that, Yeah. So by the time I got to GCSEs, realised this is kind of what I wanted to do. I did attempt A-levels. That went badly wrong. just put it this way, I realised the academic side of me wasn't really in a great place. And then in jumping into how we met, I went and did a course at Stratford upon Avon College, of which I still think you're only like a year older than me, but you were a technician. Is that right? Or something like that?
So I'm 20. I'm 28 now.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the time, so I'd started out as so I'd done my apprenticeship at the college. So rather than be on the course, I was an apprentice with the technical department. Various things happened, unfortunate for some. And I was very quickly fast tracked up into kind of technician position and role, and very much the same as you were just saying. Then figured out by doing. My apprentice was great, or apprenticeship was great. I learned a lot, but I still feel like a lot of the time it was, okay, here's a load of kit. Let's just. I don't want to use the word play, but I will. And sit and figure it out. So yeah, that's kind of how we met. And yeah, so I'm not that much older than you, but it was a weird time to say the least.
Well, it ended up being very weird for me there because falling back to my GCSEs, I hadn't done the best in my English GCSE. And so Stratford College asked me to do the level 2 course before even doing the level 3, what would be the A-level equivalent. And then alongside, I redid my English GCSE, which at the time I was like, I don't want to, this seems like a step backwards. Why am I doing this? And but looking back at it, it was probably one of the best things that happened because the course I was on only ran 3 days a week. Yeah. And on the rest of the time, I managed to get myself involved with an arts centre. I just learned to drive. My parents were adamant that I couldn't go to college until I could drive because I was from a village in the middle of nowhere, as I think a lot of people around Stratford were.
Yeah, very much so.
And my getting a car and having a driving license is my freedom. I went and did this college course that was only 3 days a week. And then I was working in an arts centre in a different town, whenever I could. And again, the technical manager at the arts centre was just very for getting me involved and teaching me, and which was brilliant. So I'd had this teacher at school who was pushing me to go and learn. I was then at college, which I think the college course was still very good. You speak to people who were on the full level course, and there was a lot of good instructors and tutors around. But I probably missed a lot of that by the fact that I was only really in a couple of days a week. But I picked up a load of what I was doing from this art centre as well in Banbury, and very quickly realised that I'm probably accelerating here faster than some. And I think I've been very lucky in the early part of my life that in this industry, I've done that. So I was speaking with the lecturers at the college, talking about what we could do. There was still the idea that I should go and do the 2-year course, which would have put me there for 3 years until I was basically 20 or 21, I think. But I just didn't really want to be in that environment. I wanted to continue working, but also learning along the side. And it was about the time that Backstage Academy had started becoming like a proper kind of
it was in the very early days.
So I think I first found out through one of our lecturers at Stratford about their course, and he was really pushing me to go on and just keep moving at the momentum I was. So I went up to Backstage, and I think at the time they only had the foundation degree, which was a real let's get people into every part of the technical production industry, and let's give them a month on each kind of discipline and see where they fit. The first 2 years of that course had about 15 people on it total, and it looked like this really high quality, very one-on-one course. Getting to meet industry professionals. They're based at the LS Live Studios, which is now Production Park. So they've got a wealth of kind of tours and acts coming through. And so it looked amazing. And I somehow managed to convince my friend from secondary school to come and do the course, but also my friend Ben, who was at Stratford College as well. But it's hard to say because at the time Backstage Academy was still developing, and I think what they have now is actually brilliant. but we joined into their third year group of the course, and it almost seemed like they went, right, let's make some money out of this, because we jumped into a course that had 70 students on it rather than the year before that had 15. They had brought in lecturers from different areas, but the course material hadn't been written by those lecturers, so they didn't really know what they were teaching. And it was a bit of a whirlwind. There was a lot of people, and there's still some people who from our year group who I have the utmost respect for, because they're out there now doing amazing shows and doing what they want to do. But I think there was a massive uptake of people who were doing the course because seemed like a fun intro to an industry that could be fun. Now,
yeah, I think it was almost a victim of its own success, really.
Yeah.
It did so well so quickly that it grew faster than they could kind of keep up, really.
Yeah.
But
and like I said, I don't want to slag them off. I actually think what they have now is brilliant. What they do now, their courses, and that, like I said, there were still people from those courses that I still keep in contact with, bump into them on a show or a tour, or they're still out there in the world. Yeah, it was just very victim of its own success. So I did year one of that. It wasn't working out. I picked up quite a bit of local work as a technician rather than local crew. A lot of the work they were pushing was local crew, because it's still a very valid way to get into the industry, is the crew, prove your worth, show what you're doing, or go work in a warehouse. I missed a lot of that because I had already jumped a few steps and I'd been guided by the right people. It's still a very valid way to get into this industry, is just to work from the bottom, because the industry is, and I think this is where the course skipped a step. The industry is a lot about hard work, but it's a lot about passion. Everyone who does what we do is passionate about what they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was listening to that podcast with Luca just before I jumped on with you, and he similar situation. He was saying he loves what he does, and that's pretty much what you would say. That's what any of our mates who work in this industry would say. So I think I went through Backstage Academy. I moved from the foundation degree to their new visual production course in my second year, which again showed a ridiculous amount of promise. But that first year, and I think only that first year, because I know people who did the second year of that course and it absolutely stellar, but that first year just was very mismanaged, and we were a bit of an experiment. And in that second year, while I was in Wakefield, I'd met the production manager at Leeds Academy. He had started getting me involved with shows there, but he was also on the side running his own company. So I was getting involved with lots of it's like club nights and live gigs and stuff around the Leeds and Wakefield and the whole Yorkshire area. And he, again, pushed me into, learning, trying to put as much effort and passion in, because that's what you need to do to get into this industry. This industry, it's all about who you know, but you only know these people, and you can only get recommended by people by being good, but also confident and hardworking. And
I think the work ethic goes an absolute mile in this industry. I think it is one of those. Every now and then you can employ someone, and just purely based on their work ethic, they might not know everything, but if they're willing to learn and take everything in, then I think that can go a long way. And you're absolutely right. You have to have a passion to do what we do at times, because there's certainly some long hours involved, and some late nights at times. And to do that and do that on the regular, I think you have to have a definite passion for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, your initial question here is advice for people who are trying to get into this industry. I think there is so many paths. Like I was saying, you could go and work in a production company, starting in their warehouse, working around. You could meet people who could bring you onto shows and gigs and smaller productions, and you can work your way that way. There are the college courses and uni courses, and I think, if you're looking at rock and roll and touring, Backstage Academy has a very, very thought out program now. There is a lot of good people coming out of there. Obviously, if you're looking more into the West End world and theatre, there's the wealth of London theatrical schools and kind of different positions there. But I mean, I'm sure like yourself, you work in theatre, and yet you have a very different upbringing to a lot of like start into this than a lot of people who work in theatre. So there are so many ways, and I think if you are interested and passionate, just throw yourself out there. Speak to uni, even if you don't want to do a uni course, speak to them, see if there's any apprenticeships, go and kind of pester those people who can help you, because at the end of the day, I think the biggest help I ever had was the people around me, and a lot of people would say the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone kind of knows you get yourself a good kind of circle of people and a good few people, and everyone knows that someone at some point has given them that opportunity, and I think everyone wants to repay that at some point and feel like if you can help someone out further down the line, when knowing that someone had helped you out when you were first starting out, I think everyone's always about that and helping each other, generally, especially if you've got the work ethic. I'm very much from the school of I was just a casual in theatres, worked my way through that, various bits and people, just getting to know people, working hard when you're there, and more opportunities arise. You take up more hours, you get offered more work at that theatre, and you kind of work your way up from there. But I think you're absolutely right. There's no right or wrong way into the industry. There's 1,000 different ways, to be honest, which probably makes it a little bit more confusing at times. But it is kind of one of those. And I think people hearing like your story of having a very different route into it, of not necessarily going straight for that uni route or straight from that, and kind of finding different avenues that worked, is always nice for some people to hear, I think.
No, it's it's an interesting one. We're a very weird and unique industry. I think one of the things we found this year is actually how little other people realize what we do. A lot of the whole kind of the We Make Events campaigns and kind of trying to get some support for our industry, you realize that most people don't realize what happens behind. They think that the actors just turn up on stage and they're in a show, or the band travel around in a minibus and they end up on Wembley at Wembley, and that's their show. We're such a, especially in the technology, we're very technologically advanced. We've come on leaps and bounds in 10 to 15 years. Videos come out of basically nothing at the beginning of this millennia, and 20 years later video is one of the key elements in a lot of productions. So yeah, there's so many specialisms, there's so many kind of job roles and things that people just don't understand we do. And if you are passionate about this industry and you don't necessarily know what you want to do within the industry, then a lot of the college courses and uni courses will probably help you with that. But if you, like myself, fairly passionate about specifically lighting or video or something like that from an early point of view, then there's other ways into it. We're not really the industry that you fall into. You do need that passion.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with an awful lot of what you said there, really. So you've just touched on it there, and do that. And obviously we're in a world that is constantly changing, and trying to keep up with technology is always joyous at times. And the kind of development of video projection and stuff into our shows and things. And like you said, it's kind of come from nowhere, really. I think for a lot of people, if you talk about a projector, it's something that either sits in a classroom or in a lecture theatre and things like that. Obviously, with your work you're doing now and your work at Adlib and stuff, it'd be nice just to kind of chat a little bit about kind of how that's become as big a thing as it is, and kind of how it's now being utilised within the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the world of video, well, okay, I'm going to firstly preference that. So I come very much from the rock and roll and touring side when it comes to video. Video is its own art. And in theatre, that's very different to how we look at it in rock and roll and touring. Now, there's a couple of different kind of uses of video. The big one that you'll see in arena show today is probably IMAG, image magnification, camera work, so that the people who are 50 meters back at the top of the grandstands are still seeing on a big screen the close-up shot of the artist. And I mean, that was a natural progression. You know, the world of broadcast and television, you know, everyone's used to looking at stuff on screens, and kind of cameras in live events was kind of one of the first major stepping stones into video. A lot of what we do uses LED wall, which is, if you're ever at a festival or a whatever, or a show at an arena, and you see the big screens side of stage, 9 times out of 10 that's going to be LED wall, because it's big, bright kind of object of video. Now, that was a natural progression. The other side of it is the creative element. And this is kind of where my passion's at. And a lot of the people I work with are very passionate about kind of the creative element of using video. This goes back to YouTube, and I don't want to say Chemical Brothers. I want to say Massive Attack. That's what I want to say. And some of these bands in the very early 2000s who were going, this is great. We can put anything on a screen now. We can push our message across and our, you know, ideas and creativity using screens, because, I mean, a light's a light, you know. I mean, I'm a lighting and video engineer. You know, I see both elements of this, but from a video point of view, a light helps you see stuff, but a video screen, you can put stuff there. You can put words, you can put content, you can put, in the cases of like U2 and Massive Attack, you can put political statements up on these screens. It's a virtual backdrop. You can do whatever you like with it. And so this started really pushing in the early 2000s. Video technology, we've been very reliant on both the consumer market and the broadcast market. And we sit in a world in the middle there where no one actually makes equipment for us specifically. It's either for broadcast television or it's for you to play a video game at home.
Yeah.
And what a lot of the development in our world and live events and rock and roll has come from is trying to work out how to use both those technologies to our advantages. So video gaming and home computing has absolutely revolutionized, I can't even say that word now, graphics cards, and the fact that your computer at home to play a video game could have this graphics card, which is at home, it's just making your computer play a 4K image and render a video game out. But we can use that to create real-time visuals, the same technology that's in that. And visuals can be audio reactive, can be reactive to cameras and take an input and rewarp it or remesh it. So on that side, we're constantly stealing technology from kind of computers and gaming in that world. On the other side is the world of broadcast, which has always been very kind of strict, very guided, there's lots of standards and protocols, and it's all very boring, and it's, you know, it's cameras and screens. But we can take that technology, we can take their camera feeds, and if we wanted to, we could absolutely warp the shit out of something, you know. Yeah. Or we could take the camera feed and apply color or an effect or a creative tool. And so the creative video side is very much sat in the middle there and gone, we'll take a bit of your technology, we'll take a bit of your technology, and we'll do this. And if you look at all the big advancements in video up until even now, all of it is that it's just going, right, we're going to take this from video gaming and we're going to take this from broadcast, and now we've got this effect that's never been done or seen before. And a lot of it is, a lot of the development is pushing for what has not been seen before. You know, like, no one wants their show to look the same. You know, if you ask an artist, if you speak to an artist, they don't want their show to look like another pop act. They want it to be unique to them. Yeah. And this covers across lighting and video. I think I have a lot of respect for team audio and everything that audio does, but the creative element is pretty much all within lighting and video, and that's what I love. I very much sit down the middle of the two disciplines in my mind, and there are quite a few people who disagree with me here, but there's still quite a few people who agree, which means I'm not totally mad. Is a light can be a video pixel, but a video pixel can also be a light. Now, a lot of what I'm trying to push kind of in my own personal agenda and what I want to continue doing as I hopefully slowly move more into a creative world rather than the fully technical world that I spend most of my time in, is not making video boring, because video has blown out of nowhere. LED walls, every production company has LED walls now. You can do all sorts of, you could just build square video walls, and then, you could do cameras, you could do creative stuff, but the creative stuff is hard to get right, because if you look at a lot of DJs and EDM artists, they might have a visuals person for them. And if they're good, they're making custom content and they're making stuff for that artist. But a lot of that world is taken up by stock content. It all looks very samey. You're looking at a 16:9 screen, which is the same as what you look at your television or your computer in front of you. And that's been done. It's been done very heavily, and it's been overdone. The part I'm interested in, especially as the technology is becoming more and more usable and more widespread, is pulling that down the chain to kind of artists who before probably couldn't afford video, but now that the technology has come down to this level, they now can, and it doesn't just have to be a square video wall, and
absolutely.
A lot of the really cool productions and shows, I've kind of got a list of shows which are going, that looked amazing. The person who's designed it's gone, how do we use video interestingly? And a lot of them you would take the same effects and you would do them in different ways, but you can make something unique for that artist. And I think that's really where I think the push for video needs to be, is creatively using it, because in the world of theatre, video would be thought about to the nth degree. You look at some of the shows,
absolutely.
You look at some of the shows the Royal Shakespeare Company have done with video, and you don't just download stock content and play it. Everything is thought about. The content's made incredibly well, and that, I think, in the world of theatre has definitely come down the chain, because you're seeing a lot of the smaller theatre shows now incorporating video. But they would have a content creator, they would work with the set designer and the artistic director to create something that's very unique. And I think with the explosion of video we've had in rock and roll and touring, a lot of that's being forgotten. Not always, there is still a lot of good productions out there, but I think we can definitely trickle that to more and more artists.
Yeah, I think certainly from the theatre standpoint, and from what you said is absolutely spot on, is that it's trickling its way down, and at the very top end it's actually, I think, even more about how you can incorporate it in, so that people don't realize that it's video, that it is from that. So the show that I was touring just before lockdown was Matt Bourne's Red Shoes, and Duncan McLean's the video and projection designer on that, and what he's done in that is incredible. At one point the whole set turns white, and every single thing you see in that show is entirely video projection and content that he's created and done from that, and it's mapped to within centimeters of its life, and it has to be nigh on perfect, but works beautifully well. And we take it through, you walk the whole world, and it looks like it's in a completely different place, and it's all done from video. So I think that's where like I said, in theatre land, that's how it is now being used. It's being utilized because it's come from, and I loved your point of that you can use video as light, and whether that's a screen, whether that's a projector, from that point of view, because I think that's something that a theatre world is starting to use more and more of as well, which is always really nice to see. But so yeah, you're absolutely right in that it's trickling its way down, slowly starting to come into kind of the smaller stuff as well, which is nice to see. And like I said, there are endless possibilities.
Oh no, absolutely. And I think obviously I've talked a lot about LED wall there. Projection is actually my favorite medium, because you can think of it like a moving light, but it has infinite gobos, there's infinite patterns, and kind of, you can, like you said, design it perfectly to fit exactly what you're doing. And it doesn't even need to be seen as video. One of the shows I did just before I went full time, was with my good friend Miles. He's a lighting designer designer, and I was using a pair of video projectors, and I kind of hacked together a little bit of software within another bit of software. But he had these spheres in his backdrop. There was about 50 of them, and at points we were projecting texture onto these spheres. But the most part, the effect was we were using the video projectors like we would use an LED light, and we were projecting color onto each sphere independently, so he could use it from his lighting desk like he would use a light. And it's just trying to utilize technology as well in a way that makes your life easier, but it's just rewarping what you think something should be able to do. Creating an effect a different way, which might be more efficient, not just on kind of time and money, but more efficient for kind of achieving that effect. So yeah, there's a lot of things in video that it's just about introducing people to that and trying to not make it scary, because most people think video from a technical point of view is a really hard thing to do. And I'm not going to lie, I like to describe myself as a lampy who got bored, so went and did video. It's not overly hard. There is the biggest problem lies is the fact that we don't actually have bespoke technology.
No, absolutely. Like you said, I think you've touched on it in that I think we're still in its very early days of what it can do, and hopefully it gets to the point where things start to be created, or bits of equipment are created purely for as we do. And I think as more things are created and we adapt other bits of industry software to work for it, I think hopefully then bits will start to appear, and that then give us even more scope and availability to be even more creative with it than we already are. Grand. Well, we'll kind of start to wrap this up a little bit. So everyone who comes on the pod gets asked the same 3 questions at the end. If you've got a dream show, dream gig to work on, be involved with, who or what would that be?
That's actually a really hard question, because the artists that I personally really enjoy their music, or really aspire to kind of do something creatively with, have usually had a really good production behind them anyway. Mm-hmm. But there's people like this guy called Stromy. He's a Belgian French musician, just one of the most bizarre but creative people kind of ever seen. His music's very, very to the point. His singing and his vocals very to the point. And I mean, his show currently looks amazing, so I don't know where I'd improve on that. But someone like Lorde, I think Lorde as a pop star is just, her lyrics take her away from that kind of generic world of pop music and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's a couple of, I like it. I like electronic-y pop, let's put it that way. So stuff in that world, that's kind of what gets my mind going a lot. So
grand. So second question, what is your go-to post-show, post-get out snack? Everyone's got that one little thing that they just kind of go, yeah, that's just sat in the toolbox for that emergency little snack boost of sugar.
Oh, that sorry, again, that's a really, really hard one, because I don't think I've ever had a go-to.
I've always got Malwams in my toolbox, always.
Oh wow, maybe that's something I've completely missed on. I don't know. For me, it's actually all about the pre-show meal. Yeah. When you get that kind of hour and a half before the show is live, and you've got to run out somewhere. And I don't know. I'm a big fan of American food. You'd realise why if you saw me. But something like an American smash burger or something like that.
Nice. I mean, yeah, the pre-show meal is good. Yeah, I've always got a few little just high sugar things in my toolbox. I mean, I emptied my toolbox for the first time in 5 months after coming off tour, and yeah, still finding Malwam in my toolbox. Going, well, they're left from Wimbledon. So yeah, interesting. And last piece could be a potential trick question. You might know it straight off your head, and it's to try and end on a little bit of a good note. Really, is if there's one thing you know now, one piece of advice you could give to someone starting out in their career, what would that be? That one thing that you wish you knew starting out, really?
Well, I mean, I think we touched on kind of the start of this earlier. I mean, you have to be so passionate and have such a hard work ethic in this industry. And I feel I had a lot of that for, the whole time to get to where I am now. But the one thing I missed out on, and I only really noticed this in the past couple of years. I mean, it was really noticeable when you suddenly hit a brick wall and, sat in your flat for 3 months because of COVID. But it's to look after yourself. We work ridiculous hours. We have quite often a high level of stress put on us by time schedules and meeting the demands of whatever's going on around us. So look after yourself, give yourself that time to relax. And if you go out and touring because that's what you want to do, don't necessarily go drinking every night after the show and bits like that. And no, just give time to look after yourself, mental health especially. I think a lot of people I spoke to this year, when they hit that brick wall of the March 23rd where everything just stopped, is they realized they didn't really have much else of a life outside the industry, which is very important to get that balance right. But they just had realized they spent the last couple of years working so hard, and this is the first time that people had stopped. Like a lot of my friends were in the same situation. You go, well, actually, even when I went on holiday, I didn't really stop because lots of people I know are very adventurous. They go on adventurous holidays. I fill my holidays with going and exploring, going to museums, going to cool places and seeing stuff. I've never taken a beach holiday. So but look after yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that, mate. And it's a really nice note to end on. And I think it's something that we can all probably learn from and have in the last few months. Mate, this has been an absolute pleasure and lovely to catch up as well.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Stage Is Yours podcast. Want to know more? Then head over to all of our socials. You can find us at Stage Is Yours Pod, where you can catch a cheeky glimpse at some of our upcoming guests, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to make sure that you never miss an episode. This has been the Stage Is Yours podcast, talking all things theatre and events. Until next time.